So hello and welcome to another webinar by XTM International. Today we're going to talk about XTM's query management module. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Iñaki Hernandez Laza and I'm a member of the Xpert team at XTM. But before we start, I would like to mention a few housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded. You will receive the recording afterwards, and you will also be able to access it in the future through XTM On Demand. If you haven't done so yet, please visit our website and register to access XTM's webinars. This will give you free access to past webinars on different subject matters. All participants are muted by default, and if you wish to ask a question, please do so via the chat panel. And we'll try and answer questions at the end of the session if time permits. So let's start with today's topic, which is query management module and how to improve production efficiency. First of all, let me explain the use case for query management systems and query management modules. A lot of industry research has taken place in the localization industry about query management. And in one of those research that was carried out by a large LSP in the past, it was concluded that for large multilingual projects, up to 30% of a project manager's time can be spent on dealing with queries. As you're all too familiar, you may have queries from one language as to how do I translate this term as A or as B, but you can also have language independent queries. Perhaps a difficult concept, a difficult term to understand in the source language, and you're going to have 20, 30, 40 linguists in each language asking you the same query. What does this mean? Can you please clarify with the customer? Is there any preference, etc., etc. So obviously, query management takes an awful lot of time if there's no centralization. But the implementation of a query management system allows you for higher productivity because that reduction of that time can be reduced very significantly. Also, you have full transparency in the queries. It's very often the case in the industry that query management has been shared in Google Sheets, in emails. What happens if the project manager goes on maternity leave or sick or is gone on holidays? What happens to that email? What happens to that spreadsheet, so to speak? It's happened to all of us, right? So again, having a centralized query management module as part of XTM Cloud, as part of the TMS system, allows for full transparency and accessibility by all the stakeholders in the localization work cycle. At the same time, queries not only being for translators and reviewers, also for technical writers perhaps, and clarifying queries with the technical writers. What does this mean? How do you want us to translate that perhaps to a language sheet or a specific language, right? So all of these things, all these productivity gains and transparency obviously lead to faster time to market by that reduction of query management cycles as we mentioned before. Also, cross-language resolution is something that is quite important. We all know, particularly I'm from Spain originally, how many times you can ask an Italian colleague or a Portuguese colleague, how do you translate that in Italian? How do you translate that in Portuguese? And languages that share a common root perhaps can help each other in terms of the resolution of those queries as to perhaps new terms that have been coined in an industry in a specific domain. How do we deal with that in certain languages? So you can have cross-language resolution in those particular cases. But most importantly as well, the query management module is allowing you to assign specific questions to specific qualified experts. So we're going to see a real-life example where I have translators and reviewers, and we're going to see that in real time. As I mentioned, it's fully integrated in real time with XTM Cloud Workbench, and we'll see that in a demo in the next few minutes. And the query management module was introduced in the past by XTM as a part of increased functionality for what we had already in the existing chats. We have the chat functionality, but we have managed to improve the workflow consistently and significantly by linking the queries to segment numbers, so the identification of the segments and the query pertaining to that segment can be easily resolved and identified. So we have unique identifiers, and then we can categorize those by status, by priority, opening that to multiple participants, and again through notifications, which are very effective. And of course, you can do searches and filters in the query management module, as we will see. So that was only a very quick introduction to set the framework, to produce or to talk about the use case. But let's go into a real life demo, which I'm sure is what you want to see, right? So let's go into my platform. And basically, we have a project manager here. I'm going to log in as a project manager. Now, for the sake of speeding things up, so to speak, I have already created a project called Query Management Demo under a customer called Query Management. And basically, let me show you very, very quickly what this entails. It's a very, very simple project into Italian and Spanish. And basically what I have done is apply machine translation just to make sure that we speed things up quite significantly. In terms of workflow, I have applied a very simple workflow, translate and correct. Okay, of course, you can have translation, correction, review, language quality assessment, whatever the case might be. And for those of you who are not that familiar with XTM Cloud, remember that you can have different workflow steps for different languages as well. So perhaps Italian has 2 steps, Spanish has 4 steps, whatever the case might be, you can edit workflows both once you have created a project here or at project creation stage as well. So one of the important things is that understand who is who and who is adopting what role within the actual workflows here. So first of all, we have for Italian, Peter is my linguist who will translate. David is my reviewer who will review Italian. Elena is my translator for Spanish, and Lucia would be my reviewer or corrector for Spanish. Now, you are all familiar with users, language combinations, etc. But you can also create user groups. And user groups, as you can see here, have a number of Spanish linguists, Spanish reviewers, German translators, etc. And I also have a group called chat group. So you can actually predetermine from the beginning that you want to create a chat group for a specific customer, for a specific project, whatever the case might be. So let's say I want to add a query management module webinar. I had it done from before here. And then you can say it is a chat type group, okay? And you can save that. And then you can apply and assign the users. I can add users to the chat group. It's going to be David, Elena, who else? Lucia and Peter. Those are going to be my actors, so to speak, within that group. Okay, so you can have a group here created as QMM webinar. Okay, so it's important to specify that. Obviously, each user will have a language combination that will allow them to specifically take part in certain languages, and also as well certain customers that will be able to do different workflow steps in those specific languages. Let's go very quickly into the project that I have created. But before I do so, I'm going to show you from the project manager point of view a couple of things in the chat configuration. First of all, you have the chat configuration here whereby you can send emails about new chats. So whenever a new chat is created, people who will be applied to that chat will get an email notification saying, hi guys, there's a new chat here. Of course, they will be announced or will be alerted here through the speech bubbles here as well. Now, you can allow linguists to create chats without PMs. My recommendation would be to have that off, because I think it's important that PMs in all capacities are aware and are notified and track the query management in a specific project. Okay, so I think it's best, in my particular view, to keep that and make sure that the PM is alerted. You can allow the users to show their avatars in the chat window. The avatar obviously is here. I don't have any avatars for these users. You can see my avatar here on the top right for my account, but here I don't. But obviously you have your picture or your logo, whatever the case might be. And if you are familiar with the subcontracting feature and capabilities of XTM, you can also include the language service provider PM in the chat if the language service provider is assigned to the workflow. Okay, so you can delimit in the chat configuration different aspects there. So let's do something. I have created a project as a PM, and I'm going to log in as a linguist. Remember that Elena was translating into Spanish and Lucia was the reviewer. Okay, so Elena logs in with her credentials, and as you can see, there's a smaller number of items in the top menu. Why? Because she has restricted rights as a linguist, and she has an active project here for query management demo, and Elena is going to go and open the workbench. Okay, very good. As you can see, it has been done with machine translation, as I showed you before at the project generation project information stage, in order to speed things up. So let's say, for instance, that machine translation has translated project managers as in Spanish, gerentes de proyecto. Okay, that's fine, but many times colloquially, we can even say in Spanish, los PMs, right? It's not particularly perfect, but it's better to use gerentes de proyecto. But for the sake of argument and for the sake of the demonstration, let me say that Elena wants to create a chat for this segment, and it's at target level. Now, look at the difference. If I have source selected, that would be typically a question that could be sent to somebody who is knowledgeable about the source content. The chat will be included in the PM and all the linguists in this project, regardless of the languages. However, if you do it for the target, the chat will include the PM and the linguists for this particular language. Notwithstanding, I can then add participants from other languages as well, as we see. Okay, but anyway, let's clarify that from the beginning. So let's say Elena has a query and it's a medium priority query. It's not super urgent, it's not super important, but let's say I'm just going to put it in Spanish, right? Gerentes de proyecto, or more colloquial PMs. Okay. So basically, Elena starts the chat. The chat was created successfully. You can have here the chat, and you can click on the chat ID to open this. So once we click on the chat ID, see how this is red, is blinking here. So I have that in here. So at this point in time, who has been notified here? Elena has been notified, the PM has been notified, and Lucia has been notified as well. I can even make it much more obvious to Lucia and say, Lucia reviewer, with the @ sign, Lucia, and I say, what do you think? Right? So basically, Lucia is going to come here. She's going to be notified. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out as Elena, the translator, and I'm going to log in as Lucia, the reviewer. So Lucia comes in. Lucia has 4 chats here, or 4 queries, and you can see, let me move this a bit here. I have the webinar symbol here, let me move it. Okay, perfect. You can see how there are a number of queries, but the one with the @ sign has been specifically sent to Lucia. She knows that it has been directed to her because of the @ sign. So she can go in here, Lucia review what you think. You can see how it's highlighted as well. And Lucia can say, Elena, please use gerentes de proyecto. Oops, I wasn't typing in the right place. Please use gerentes de proyecto and add to the term base. Okay. So now Lucia is telling her, don't use PMs, use gerentes de proyecto. And by the way, add that term as well into the terminology database. So there you go. Lucia has finished this task of this comment. Let's go back to Elena. Elena has received that notifications, is there. 1. notification, add sign to Elena. Elena, please use gerente ese proyecto and add to the term base. Okay, so Elena follows suit because remember, Lucia is the reviewer who has the power to decide on those items and those issues. So Elena comes here and says project managers, or project manager rather, I'll put it in canonical form. I want to add a term and I want to say that it's a valid term. I'm going to put in lowercase canonical form, which is the best practices for terminology management. And I'm going to say in singular, gerente de proyecto. And then we have this term as valid as well. So basically what we have now is the term has been decorated, highlighted in blue, and then we have the term. So we have moved from having a query to resolving the query with the specific actors and stakeholders, taking corrective action and say, by the way, it's a good query, it should be included in the term base so everybody knows, all the translators in Spanish do know about that. Okay, that's fine. Let's get out of here for a second and let me go back to Elena. I'm in Elena's at the moment. Yes, correct. I'm in Elena's. Let me move this out of here. Okay, so what happens here? Elena can go into here, into the query management module. Let me close this so you can see it better. She can go into the query management module to see more chats. And remember that Elena was the creator and originator of that query. Okay, so this is the query in question that she opened. And she has visibility to a number of options. But first of all, let's see the menu on the top here. You have the chat ID, and the chat ID, if I open this chat, okay, if I open this chat here, the chat number is, let me see, I have it here. The chat number is this one. Okay, copy chat ID. If I do chat ID and I copy that, it will bring me to the specific query that I have asked. Okay, that's fine. What else can we search for? We can search for customer. Let's say I have queries in the number of customers, QMM, query management, IHL software, example, customers, etc. I have a number of queries and I can filter and can say, look, show me the queries that you have in this particular customer. We have one question there. Okay. Now we can also say, show me, for instance, the project name. Okay, show me the, for instance, the file name. Show me the target language. Let's say we have queries in Spanish. Okay, let's see what we have in Spanish. And we have a number of questions here in Spanish. You can see how this is segment number 3, segment 11. So I can also search for the segment number. So if I say, show me the query that was pertaining to segment 3, here I have 2 queries for segment 3. I have, let's say, for segment 11, I have 2 queries for segment 11. There you go. Again, reference. I can do a search based on that, whether the query has been applicable to the source or to the target. In this particular case, there was queries to the target, right? There you have it, all the queries that I have applicable to the target. You can, of course, do segment text searches. You know that the query was about project manager. You can type that, of course. Priority. Priority will determine whether the query is low, medium, high, or no priority. So again, you can see that again reflected in here. We can have the status open, close, etc. But the priority is also indicated here in this particular column here. The status, again, we can say, show me the queries that are open. Let's see if we have any. We have a number of queries open. And you can also decide to do query searches based on creation date. So you can say, show me queries created between the 21st of June and today, which is the 23rd. And we have a number of queries here as well. So that's very good. You can also show unread chats. So basically that will be that you're filtering and it will allow you to drill down. In this particular case, all of them have been read. That's why I have no results. And you can also determine how many queries you want to show per page. You want to say 10, 20, 50, etc. Okay, so that's quite clear. But what happens next is that Elena can actually go to the query that we had, this one. We can open the chat again. Okay, as we saw, please use Gerentes de Proyecto, add to the term base, that's fine. Elena has then included that query in the term base. Elena can actually view the details as well. Other participants can view details as well, but the originator of the query is the person who can close, change the status, etc. So you can see the project name, the file name, target language, reference for target, segment 3, priority medium, created on that date. Okay, and Elena can come in here now and say, I want to change the priority. It was a medium, let's put it to a high priority because perhaps it's a very important term to have and everything. But we also can go in here and Elena can change the status of that and can resolve this. Basically, can say it's a closed query now, it has been resolved. It could be in progress if you have any communication in between language leads, project managers, etc., translators, etc. But in this particular case, it has been now closed and Elena can close that query. As you can see, queries that have been closed obviously go grayed out, and that is the significance of that. You can very clearly visually see what's open, but of course, the filtering capabilities. Now, in this particular case, let's change the status and open this again, open this query. Okay, and let me open this chat again. As I was saying to you before, imagine you have you're translating a documentation for very difficult content, machinery or medical or life sciences, whatever the case might be, and you don't understand a particular concept. You can actually ask somebody from another language, perhaps. You can see here how you have who is involved in this particular case, right? We have Elena, we have Lucia, etc., right? But you can also add other people here, okay? You can add Elena, the PM, etc. So again, the project manager will be able to add David, will be able to add Peter for other languages as well. In this particular case, remember that we have Elena opening that query, but the project manager obviously will have the rights and the capabilities to open queries, resolve queries, and again, contact members of other languages if that is the case, in order to resolve cross-language queries if that is the case. Of course, the capabilities can be much more difficult. It all depends on the type of project you have, the number of workflow steps that you have. But basically today, what I wanted to show you was the mechanics, the different functionality, how we have maximized from a chat into query management, and with all the capabilities that we have. Basically, the capabilities of opening chats, viewing details, changing priorities, status change, and again, all the filtering capabilities by showing only the unread chats. The privacy type as well, you can make them public or private. You can decide whether you want to make them to a restricted group or not. And again, how we look for specific text and segments, priority status that you have here, date of creation, target languages, etc. Okay, so very simple. This is the basic functionality. Like everything else, this is a matter of now. I recommend that you go into your own instances. When you create projects, make sure you have the specific access rights, making sure you give access rights to other people. Remember that it's important that when you have these as well, you go to, let me log in as a project manager, that you have your users here and your user groups. And that user group, as we see, you have the chat group. And of course, those users have a specific access rights, workflow steps, roles, and language combinations. Okay, so again, you can see how I'm in the PM role here now. I have been notified here as well. It wasn't directed at me, there's no @ sign, but as a project manager, I have full visibility here as to what happened here as well in that. Okay, now I don't know if we have any questions at the moment. I don't see any queries. As I say, it's a case of, you can see here as a PM, I can change participants here as well. As a project manager, I can add PMs, I can add linguists, LSPs if I want to, user groups, language groups, chat groups that we created. Remember that we had in the project that I generated, Elena was a linguist, Thea was a reviewer, but let's say the project manager wants to say, you know what, I want to include David because he's an Italian reviewer, and Peter, the Italian linguist. And again, you can include those people here as well. And now, as I was saying before, Elena can go in here, or the PM can go in here and say, by the way, David, how do you resolve this issue, right? How do you do it? So basically, it gives you that full flexibility to make sure you have all the participants in there, okay? Are there any queries at this point in time? I don't see any questions in here. No. There's no queries. There's no questions. Okay. All right. So if there's no questions, this concludes today's webinar, where I simply gave a very overall idea as to the functionality of the query management module. I would like to thank you for attending today's session. If you have any questions, of course, about this webinar or about any other aspect of XTM's functionality, please do not hesitate to contact us. So thank you again, and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye for now.